Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the preview of Il Lombardia 2023. We're recording this on Wednesday morning. The race is on Saturday, as is typical for the Italian classics. We've had a couple of warm-up races before this. Giro dell'Emilia, won by Primoz Roglic with his patented sprint on the weekend. And yesterday we had an exciting edition of Tre Valli Varesine, another hilly circuit race, not with climbs. Both of those races, climbs not as long as what we have here in Il Lombardia. That was won by Ilan van Wilder. We will talk about that a little bit because I think the tactics are really relevant in both races for this Saturday race. But the profile has changed, Benji. It's flipped around. Which one is this?
So basically the storyline is that every year the starting line and the finishing city, they switch around. So this year it's from Como to Bergamo, last year from Bergamo to Como, and 2 years ago from Como to Bergamo. So it's basically the 2021 route. If you remember, 2021 were the days where I recall Pogacar basically attacking in the main on the last climb, then Masnada having some demon descending towards Pogacar in the descent, and then I swear Pogacar tried to drop Masnada on the final hill, like the small Colle Aperto, just before the finish line. And he didn't drop him, but then Pogacar won the sprint. No,
yeah, I think so.
Correct?
I think that's right.
My memory of the race is still fine. What do you prefer this parkour, or do you prefer the other? Because I feel like this one is 5 to 10% more mountainous, if that makes sense.
So from memory, which was the one that Pino and Lombardia and
Civiglio?
Pino was the I always think Civiglio when I think Lombardia, the 4K 10.1% climb.
And the descent.
Yeah, the descent. That's what, when I think of Lombardia, that's what I think of. Did it have the most exciting racing last year? It was kind of the same race. It was just Pog and UAE whittled it down progressively over the climbs. And then Enric, in fact, attacked Pogacar. Maybe he even was a little bit stronger on the climbs, but they weren't long enough. And Pogacar won another sprint. So, yeah, I don't really know. It depends on the start list. Depends on how the race plays out. I think this is still a fine. It's just longer climbs. It's a different parkour because, they 240 Ks. It's long. Last year, the other one is actually 15 kilometers longer, about maybe 20 minutes longer the race. But this has more 20-minute climbs. And so the Madonna del Ghesallo, they warm up where the break will go or just before there. Then the Roncola, 6Ks, 8.5%. The Berbeno, 7Ks, 5%. Bitterflat, and the Passo della Crocetta, 12Ks, 6%. Then the Zambla Alta, another 2.6Ks at 7%. A lot of these climbs are actually quite irregular.
Yeah.
Then a descent, and then the real climb where we expect the race, like this is where it should kick off, really. This is where the race-defining move will probably happen. The Passo di Ganda, 9K, 7.1% before a descent, short valley, and then a 1.3K, 7% climb. It's really, say, pretend this was a Grand Tour stage, Benji.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would probably think this was a small group sprint or maybe some late attacks like on Fossombrone on the Colle Aperto, because it's before the Passo di Ganda, it's 4 climbs. Mm-hmm. Your team has to put a nuclear pace on those climbs, I think, to make people tired before the Passo di Ganda. But in saying that, Poggy was able to go away in 2021.
Exactly, and I do feel like I'm not 100% sure I agree, because I feel like the Ganda is actually hard enough in the last portion, like the last 3 kilometers, 8.7%, going up to 15% in the last segment of the climb. I think that's hard enough to launch an attack even in a Grand Tour stage, for example. Kind of reminds me of, it's a weird comparison, but the Polarin stage with Marie Blanc, where you've got the valley after the climb, where it's not the long valley after the climb either. I feel like it's a similar scenario where they could get away on this climb with a group of 3-4 riders and make it out for the victory towards the end. I don't know how small your group sprint is, though, so maybe that was 3 to 4 riders in your head.
No, I was more thinking, 10, 12 going to Aperto and then people punching away. But you're right, it's actually the same average gradient in length as Laurent.
The real difference between last year's parkour and this year's parkour to me is that even though last year's parkour was Mas versus Pogacar, that was the kind of parkour where you could expect a puncher to slip into the top 10 maybe, right? And I feel like in this terrain, that's not really what I'm expecting to happen. I don't see that happening on a parkour like this. I think this is where the actual true climbers come out for the stage. And I reckon I've got a similar race view as you. The first two climbs, every climb except Ganda is probably going to be an attrition climb, making it harder and harder. Maybe the Docena and Zambla Alta climbs will be used to anticipate for riders that don't necessarily feel like they're going to be there in the final, or teams that want to kind of pressure other bigger teams by putting their second rider in the attack. That's possible, but I reckon it's going to be fought out on Passo di Ganda as well, and that's where we'll see the actual major differences. But is there a clear favorite based on the parkour for you? Because like last year, Mas had won Giro dell'Emilia, dropping Pogacar, but going into this race in Lombardia, we were all of the opinion that Pogacar was going to win the race anyway. Like,
because there was no Roglic on the start list because he crashed out of the Vuelta, and I think can't even remember who else was there. I don't. Man, Lombardia is a different beast, isn't it? But like, well, for example, I remember Yates was very, very good in 2021 on this parkour. But yeah. It was kind of like Landa, Higuita, Rodriguez, Valverde about to retire. I'm not sure Adam Yates was there in the top 10. Vingegaard, I think, was actually like second or third favorite, but was no good in Lombardia last year. I see this as there's two teams, two dominant teams. We've seen that in Trevally. We've seen that in Giro dell'Emilia. One dominant team, which is UAE, and one big second favorite who won Emilia, which is Roglic, with a pretty strong team as well. Mm-hmm. And to just go back to how I think this race will play out to those two races, UAE, like in the Tour, used Adam Yates as a domestique, but in Trevally yesterday, it was even more kind of head-scratching to me that you would use, not to make the race really hard and reduce the group, they used Adam Yates to chase a Wilco Kelderman bait move 15 seconds ahead on the flat and a descent. Chavez also chased a little bit. When he was pulling just with Barguil, with 20 kilometers to go, 23 kilometers to go, he's pulling a group of 25 plus. It was baffling to me that they would use Yates in that way. And I do think in this race, I would try, if I was Jumbo, to do exactly the same thing, which is on those earlier climbs you mentioned, Benji, where realistically you're not going to win the race going on Bereno, you're not going to win the race going on these earlier climbs. Send Tratnik, send Kelderman, because you do not want Yates and Pog 1-2ing you on Passo di Ganda. You want to bait them into using Yates early again.
Exactly, that's how I see it as well. We've seen multiple times now in both Emilia and Trevally that UAE really spend their domestiques early, and Emilia was volunteering to spend them early. They chose to spend them early by just pacing every single iteration of the climb there, the San Luca climb. But in Trevally, it's more that they were kind of forced to do it. And if you see that they react when they're forced to do it, then you can try and use that in Lombardia to create the same exact scenario and hope that that reduces the firepower that UAE has before the final climb. And we saw then, for example, in Emilia, that Pogacar doesn't really have that in that race to end up dropping Roglic on that climb. And I know Lombardia is different. Passo di Ganda might be different, but I do feel like there's something in the last two stages where I'm not completely confident in Pogacar either. It's weird. It's like I kind of expected more because I also haven't seen a snap in the last two races.
Well, yeah, Roglic is coming in here with, you've not seen that separation. Maybe what you mean is, it's not that he's not dropping Roglic. Yeah. He's not dropping anybody. In Trevally in particular, he attacked. Mas was right there. It's still a group of 10, 12. Yeah. He's not getting that separation. But I would say Lombardia it really is different. It's really, really different. Do you get Passo di Ganda? These are 20-minute efforts. They're completely different. And so...
And the length of the race.
Yeah, exactly. 240 Ks. probably 4,000 meters climbing. So would I expect Pog to just drop Roglic on the Colle Aperto? No. But I think there's also a Pave section in there. But is he more likely to drop him on Passo di Ganda than in the previous 2 races? Absolutely. And he's done that in the past. Yep. So perfect climb length for Pog. But you're right. It's not that he's not dropping Roglic. He's kind of not dropping anybody. He's a little bit of a... But is he just tricking us? I don't know. Probably.
Question. We've seen Pogacar and Roglic in his last 2 races, but we've also seen that third man that was also very active in the last few races, and I feel like he's a bit of an underdog because Trevalle's scenario, the way it was won by Van Wilder, is really interesting because the group was kind of looking at each other and looking at Roglic and Pogacar to solve it, and Roglic and Pogacar don't want to ride each other to the finish line. So you get a scenario where Van Wilder attacks and there's no instant reaction, and then he's gone and wins the race. And that suggests to me that it's not impossible for another rider to win either, tactically. That being said, I feel like that scenario is more likely to happen in a Trevalli than it is in a Lombardia, because I expect the stakes to be a bit higher there, but also next to that, the climb is longer, so it's harder to benefit from that attack in that sense. But Carapaz is a man that I'm looking at right now, because El Hadwa has been on fire the last, like, he's had a bit of a bad moment, as in Tour de France, he started off crashed very early. Vuelta, I think he wasn't ready in time or something, and then he didn't show up on the start list, even though he was planned to ride the race or something. And now he's built into the Italian Classics, and he looks really good, in my opinion.
Well, he's attacking them. Very powerful attack at the end of Tre Valley, getting a gap after the group had been non-cooperative. And if it is the case that Jumbo send Kelderman, Tratnik, Valter, Kruiswijk early, UAE spend their DOMs early, the 2 Slovenians once again have no teammates for a long time in the final, and you've got this punch and then a flat sprint, and you've got Carapaz, Vlasov, Hindley, O'Connor, Yoni Zagira, all looking at the 2 Slovenians, thinking, I have no interest in going to this punchy climb, 3-4 minute climb, and a flat sprint with you. You could have that situation on Van Wilder, that situation that you described. One man we haven't mentioned at all, Benji, Remco Evenepoel.
Yes.
Mainly because he's probably the 3rd favourite that hasn't done these 2 warm-up races. But he just did a reconnaissance of the Lombardia course. It is, I think, a great course for him because he can win it 3 different ways. He can win it dropping everyone on Ganda or going with them on Ganda. He can win it punching on Colle Aperto. He can win a flat sprint from a group of 3, 4, 5 in the finish. So he has a lot of options to win this. My question mark is maybe his descent. Like Poggy's descent of the Ganda was not good in 21 from memory. Lost a lot of time to Masnada. What do you think after Van Wilder's win? So basically, I think they should go as co-leaders, by the way. Like, Van Wilder was so good. Like, that wasn't just an accident that he rode away from O'Connor and everybody on that climb. They'll have Alaphilippe, Van Sevenant, Van Wilder, Vavaka as the main guys. What do you think Quick-Step's strategy should be? Should it actually... If you got Remco in the group and Van Wilder jumps again, I know he just won, I feel like people still won't react.
I feel like I would look at it at a similar scenario as the one we proposed for Jumbo, as in an Alaphilippe I don't see in the final. So why don't you use him to just do what he does best, attack early
with
and drop a bit later, but by attacking early, he puts pressure on UAE. They will lose domestiques in that sense. Maybe Jumbo will lose some domestiques as a consequence by being in that attack with Alaphilippe. And therefore, you might have a scenario where you have Van Wilder and Remco in the final group where Pogacar is solo and Roglic is solo. So I'd like to have that scenario if I'm them. I do feel like, despite Van Wilder's win, that Remco might be solo leader. And I wouldn't necessarily play it like that because I do like the rolling attacks idea of doing so against a group that has Pogacar and Roglic. But I think there's some hierarchy there.
The other option is, if you do still believe in Van Wilder, but you want a more closed race for Remco, is you do nothing and you hope Van Wilder goes with Remco to Colle Aperto. And then you'll probably be the only team with 2 riders unless Hindley improves from Tre Valley. and then you can use Van Wilder on Colle Aperto to put Remco in a good situation. That's the only... I think they have to use Van Wilder in that way because, like, what are they just going to make the race super hard for Remco to smash?
I don't know, man. Like,
I don't know what his shape is
I
like.
wouldn't necessarily. I agree. It's possible. Like, if you have peak Remco here, like best of the crop Remco, then you can make the race hard and try and attack in that sense. And then maybe you get over the top with Pogacar, with Roglic, with Carapaz. Maybe it's only with 3 riders. Maybe it's with 2 riders. But if you don't necessarily have the best Remco here, and that's something we don't know, then I argue you're better off using a bit more style in your play, as in try and use Van Wilder to benefit both of them and see if you can use rolling attacks to do so. Because if Remco's in the group and Van Wilder attacks, curious if they'll attack to Van Wilder. I think they'll respond to Remco anyway, but to Van Wilder they might not necessarily quick.
Yeah, that's the real flaw in the Jumbo team that I see right now is compared to UAE and Quickstep. UAE and Quickstep's second guys are top 10 riders in the race at worst, probably.
Yeah, but we've spoken now. I'll let you continue in a second. But we've spoken about Jumbo and about Quickstep, but we haven't really seen it from UAE's perspective. So after you're done with that sentence, we should also take a look at UAE.
Well, yeah, UAE, they bring here the 3rd place of 2021 on this very parkour, Adam Yates, who is in the best form of his life, won Montreal just a month ago, and Ulisi, Formolo, I think Vine is going to Turkey, so he's out. Ayuso didn't do Trevally. He was no good in Emilia. I don't think they should bring him. Personally, I think they should bring more dedicated domestiques like a Covey. I don't know where he is, actually. I'm surprised Covey wasn't in those squads. Yates, they got to protect him. And Yates, like, it's very, very obvious that you attack first on Gander with Yates. Like, you make the race a little bit difficult if no one else has beforehand. If Jumbo jump, but that's the problem, is Yates is so much better than any of Jumbo's second guys, but Jumbo have more guys to jump earlier. Like, are they going to... I guess that's Formula and Ulysses' job and Micah's job and Großschartner's job. If Volta jumps, you got to jump. Otherwise, you can't... And I would try to create a race situation where, Yates goes on Gander, and there's a very high chance if he attacks in front of Pogacar and Pogacar doesn't close him down like he did on Emilia last weekend, who's going to react? Who can react? Because Adam Yates is probably going to be on Gander, the top 3 strongest guy. Like, 20-minute tests like that. So we'll see if that situation happens. And then... Situation A, he goes away, he wins the race. Fantastic news. Situation B, Roglic, Remco, Carapaz, Mas, Hindley, Vlasov have to work their ass off all the way in the valley, Pogacar in the wheel, and then Pogacar can go. So that's how I would play it. They will probably do a lead out for Pogon Passo de Gander with Yates. He will attack. If he's the strongest to win. If he's not, he won't. That's what they'll probably do.
I reckon as well. And it's like, look at all these riders, and it's good that we've got a competition here at Lombardia, because we've had a few years where we're like, oh, Pogacar's going to clean this. We've had a few years where we were hoping maybe Moz was going to wizardry something out of his pocket. But I feel like this year, I do feel like there's a lot of riders that have a chance of winning this race, which is good. But I'm also of the opinion that, is it me, or could the Lombardia parkour be better if the Ganda climb, for example, was with 50k to go, and there was a slightly, like, and there was another climb after that, so that there's a launching point earlier, because now I feel like the climbs before Ganda are not hard enough to really activate something, and therefore the GC riders, or, well, it's not a GC, but the favorites will always wait until Ganda, you know?
Yeah, if it's a nuclear race, maybe they could, but you're right. I don't see favourites jumping before Ganda. It just seems unrealistic unless Remco tries to really go for a long one. So, I don't know. I agree. Like, maybe we're underrating how hard the climb, the Docena climb is. But let's talk about EF, actually. EF bring a pretty strong team. We mentioned Carapaz. Buran was jumping all over the place with Chavez earlier. I think they're the sort of team that They got to pick their moment, which they didn't really do. Uran and Chavez too well on the weekend. They've got to also get riders ahead, I think.
Healy.
Healy can't win the sprint. He can't win on Colle Aperto probably. They got to be anticipating and going in groups earlier, which makes it, maybe it will open up really early.
How have we come to the point that it is Wednesday? We're recording this on Wednesday. Saturday is the race. And the only team that's announced their start list is EF. How ironic is that? Sorry, but...
I can't believe it.
What alternate universe are we in?
They usually never announce for a Grand Tour until like the day before. And yeah, it is annoying. Like we're trying to do the preview, and they're the only team that's announced when everyone knows what their team is for the Italian Classics. But yeah, that's credit to EF, I guess. But yeah, Uran, Healy, Carapaz, Chavez, they actually have 4 very nice riders to go early. Other teams, Rodriguez looked quite good in Trevally Veracina. I think the longer climbs will suit him even more. Sivakov was also has been good. I think the longer gradual climbs also suit him better than maybe the 5-minute punches we see in Emilia and Veracina. So Ineos, those two in San Sebastian last year went like 3-4 or 2-3, can't remember, behind Remco. They should be also trying to get there's just a lot of teams where if you think of the end game, you just don't want to be in a sprint with Pogačar and Roglic. And that also goes for someone like Ciccone on Little Trek, or anyone on Israel like Turns, Woods.
Vlasov
and Hindley. The problem is Vlasov he's in a weird zone right now where I talk to a lot of directors, and like, for example, during the tour, people are, worried about Vlasov's position. And I'm like, you don't need to worry about Vlasov, but he's got a bit of a, like, he came second in Lombardia, to Fuglsang in 2020. He won Emilia, but he gets almost so much respect, it makes it harder for him to anticipate because other favorites jump to him.
Yeah, that's kind of true. And it's like, I do rate him more in these like these hilly classics than I do in like the proper mountains. Is the longer climbs that really are the weakness, in my opinion, of Vlasov. And it's weird because like I still vividly remember that he was really decent on longer climbs like 3-4 years ago, and he started at Astana. So it's odd how that changed, but we've now come to the point where his problem is that he's a solid puncher, but he's not good enough to compete for the victory in my eyes. So a top 10 is possible, a 5th position is possible, something like that. But I don't see him compete with the best for the victory here, and that's how I rate Vlasov here. And that's for a lot of riders.
It's better for Hindley, I guess, this parcours than the previous 2 longer climbs for Hindley.
I reckon, but I don't see it either. I see just a top 10 position for Hindley because he doesn't have that finishing ability on a parcours like this, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's like with Woods. Like, Woods are probably top 10, but you got a descent. So before the longest, hardest climb, you got a descent that he's going to get caught on. Colle Aperto, is it long and hard enough for him? If it was 1K, 15%, Woods has more of a chance, but it's not. And the flat sprint, he's not winning. So, and the valley is bad for him. So, it's tough for a guy like Woods to really win this race. You need to have that whole package. Lotto Destiny, Monike, Kroon, Van Eedveld. I don't know if Van Gils is doing it. They also should be moving early, but it might be a little bit too hard for them as well. Pinot's last race for Groupama FDJ.
Mate, if Pinot arrives at this race with Martinez and Gregoire, it really feels like the changing of the guards in Groupama, because I
haven't seen them the previous 2 races. They've been really bad.
Okay, but when it comes to Pinot, it's like it is his final race. He's been good at this race before, annoyingly good, because me as a fanatic Vincenzo Nibali fanboy, I was perishing in 2018 when he absolutely very sad destroyed Nibali on Civiglio. Don't want to talk about it anymore. That's the last thing I mentioned about my life. But he was also strong in other years. I swear he was second behind Nibali in 2017.
Yeah,
I guess.
Oh, he's 5th. But
2014.
I swear he was 3rd in 15.
No.
I swear he got dropped on the descent one year.
Yeah, that's true. He got dropped on the descent one year. You're right. In 2015, he indeed got 3rd, and there's been a few editions of that. But I also feel like I don't expect anything from Pinot in this race. Like, it's going to be the kind of like celebratory thing. I hope he attacks at some point, some attack that completely explodes him, but at least we saw him in his final race. That's what I want to see. And I I actually wonder how many fans there's going to be in Italy for this from Pinot for his last race. But the fact that these youngsters are here, Lenny Martinez, Gregoire, I don't expect anything from them on this parcours necessarily, because it's still a monument, a mountain monument. So Martinez might be a bit better than Gregoire on this one. But on the other hand, I'm like...
And they look terrible.
They look terrible recently, so...
Yeah. George Zimmerman, I don't know if he's doing it for Intermarché. I'm tracking him pretty closely. Yoni Zagira is my dark horse to win on Cofidis, actually. He started attacking in Treval yesterday. He's got the descent. He's got a decent sprint. He's got race sense. He's had an incredible year. I'm really seeing a Carapaz Yoni Zagira type move. Because it could, if Pog isn't superhuman, and I also wonder if Pog goes with Roglic over the top of Gander, or Pog goes with Emco, or two of the three go. Do they work well together in the valley? I don't know.
Remco and Pog might.
And Rog and Pog might as well, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's the question I have. And so I really see maybe a Basque Country Stage 6 sort of situation in the end game. And so I really like Yonis Zagira in that scenario. Bahrain, Santi's been training hard in Italy. He came third in Liège. He's also got a decent sprint. He's also got a decent punch. And I think, okay, race sense. So Bahrain can't be counted out. I don't know if Wout Poels is doing it. Or Morich, who just did Crow Race. But they could send a really strong team, Bahrain, as well in this race. So... I think it could be pretty interesting with a lot of riders that could win, because UAE's team, apart from Yates, is not as stacked as it was like last year. It was so stacked, and they just suffocated the race.
It's weird because on paper it's stacked, but in practice, that's not a word. In practical, in the race, there it hasn't shown. Ayuso was not good in Emilia. Vine has been used early together with Micah, so Micah's form is probably not great. Vine has been used because other riders just weren't there anymore.
And he's out.
Is he out?
He's doing Turkey.
Yeah, you're right. Presidential Tour of Turkey, that's a program decision. You like it?
Turkey, they all win the UCI ranking.
Fuck my life.
Which is funny because the way they use Yates means he can't get his best result for points.
Yes.
So
the whole thing about trying to win the UCI rank, nobody fucking cares about the UCI ranking outside of UAE.
Machin did an interview with Mark. He said, actually, it means we're the best team in the world.
That's fucking bullshit. Sorry, Machin. It's bullshit. Like, you're not the best team in the world if you win the UCI ranking. Jumbo-Visma won 3 Grand Tours. That's the best team in the world right now.
Yeah, but if you're communicating season success to maybe a stakeholder or sponsor who doesn't understand cycling, you're like, hey, we're number one.
I agree. To a sponsor that does not understand cycling, it might work. But I also think that same sponsor would also be happy with Pogacar winning the Tour de France instead of UAE ending up at the top of the UCI ranking at the end of the bloody year, because not a single spectator gives a fuck about that.
I think it's kind of no one really does care, I don't think. And they changed the system again this year. 20 riders count. So it really, I think the 20 riders benefits the richer teams more. I think the 20 rider rule really hurts the lower budget teams, because the lower budget teams can't afford point scorers in their 15th roster spot. But
I'm just shocked by the fact that I'm looking at your camera on the YouTube stream right now.
The sun's come.
The sun's come, and you've actually become like an actual sun yourself.
All right, why don't you give me your dark horses while I fix this?
Okay, I'll talk about my dark horse in the race, which I completely did not prepare. So, I do want to see Carapaz score well, because he's really been in form, and I feel like he deserves to be rewarded for the form he's shown in Giro dell'Emilia and Trevale Varesine. But he's not really a dark horse. God damn it. I don't really have a dark horse for Lombardia. I don't think a dark horse can win Lombardia. And Patrick will never know what I just said. So I'm afraid that you'll never know my dark horse, Patrick.
That's good. But yeah, I'm gonna go with just my straight up pick. I'm going Jonas Aguirre to win this whole fucking thing. I think UAE, Roglic, Pogacar, Remco. I think it could be something weird. So I'm gonna go Jonas Aguirre in a small sprint with Richard Carapaz going clear. Ilan van Wilder just behind them. He got free rein to chase, but he was. They're just looking at each other.
Looking at each other in the gruppetto.
Yeah, they're just looking at each other. So. Yeah, that's the type of race I'm thinking. Probably what will happen is Adam Yates just lead out for Pogon Ganda and he just stomps everybody. But
okay,
the thing is, will Roglic and Remco work together to chase him? Because Pogacar sprint, Roglic can catch Pog on that descent, I think.
I changed my mind. After 3 years, UAE have learned their lesson, and Adam Yates will actually be used as a duo leader. So Adam Yates as duo leader will win the race.
I mean, yeah, I think that's what should happen. I think there's a pretty clear path for it to happen, but I'm just not convinced it will in this race. But I'm looking forward to watching it. Remember, it's on Saturday. Forgive us for maybe not going through every single team and their entire roster, but a lot of them aren't confirmed. Maybe look out for in the early breakaway, Walter Calzoni, who was in the breakaway in Tre Valley Varacine and was quite strong, or Filippo Zanna. I would also like to see going even in the early break. I think he might even be allowed because he's not in the Italian national champs jersey anymore, so no one knows who he is again, even though he beat Pino in that Koi in the Giro d'Italia this year. But
Olaf Koi.
Olaf Koi, Oh, yeah, there was Sparkassen Munsterland Giro yesterday. Hagen has won. Didn't realize he'd won.
He's a dog buddy.
He is. He's a pod fan, I think, him and Stana Mittet, which is good to see. They'll be in World Tour next year. Is there anything else from this race, Benji?
I don't know. There's a lot next to the race that we have to talk about in the coming weeks.
Oh, that's the thing to watch. So how soon after this race? So, right, Roglic said he's announcing his team after this race.
Yeah, let's be honest, it's Bora, right?
Well, yeah, it seems to be Bora Hansgrohe. My guess is the merger, non-merger, whatever's happening with Soudal, Quickstep, and Jumbo Visma. My guess is they know what's happening and they don't want to announce it 2 days before Lombardia, where their entire roster, their riders are racing. How soon after the race is all that announced? Monday? Sunday?
9 minutes.
Roglic just posted on Instagram, that's 9 minutes after the race.
No. As the riders cross the line, and then Bacala opens a Twitter account, which, why not? Sounds like a good event. And he types, done deal.
Whatever that means. So yeah, there'll be a lot of, I think, announcements off the bike. After this, the UCI yesterday produced basically a press release saying, I think to calm some of the riders down, because frankly, there's been some incredible, to call it reporting is probably a bit generous, from Marca and L'Equipe, where they said that on Sunday letters of termination had been sent to Quickstep riders, and I was like, how did they source that? They kind of sourced it from a rider, they kind of sourced it from a team principal, they kind of sourced it from an agent. So if you haven't sourced it from those three, that was turned out to be false. And so I think the original reporting of that was done by Le Soir, which is like the southern Belgian newspaper, and maybe they took it over from that. Maybe they had their own sources for that, but it certainly didn't end up happening. So we've seen quite a bit of misinformation in the last few weeks, and it's shocking. There's probably, given how late this leaked, there's probably a very small group of people actually plugged into what's really happening. So I think if you're not sourcing it from them, then random people saying, this is they don't know.
But on the other hand, from a public perspective, so for example, me, looking from the outside, it is a very complex situation. And I do understand that people have doubts about what is happening. As in, I understand that riders that are not involved in it are worried about their job security. But I also understand that when it comes to staff, but also when it comes to the public, there's also that feeling of like, ooh, who's going to be on the opposite side of this? Who's going to have the pain at the end of the road? Because someone's going to pay at the end of the road, whatever happens. And looking at this entire scenario, then, like the UCI said, for example, in their statement, there's a UCI rule that I saw a few weeks ago where in the first 2 years of the UCI World Tour license being renewed, so for example, the licenses, the three-year
cycle.
What do you call it? 3-year cycle. The 3-year cycle was done at the end of 2022. Yes, that was last year. And the new cycle from 2023 until 2025, those licenses were renewed at the start of 2023. And in the first 2 years, those apparently can't move to another person. According to the UCI rule.
Okay, so yeah, the UCI release they're saying, and people are like, oh, that means the license can't be sold. Incorrect. Mm-hmm. Well, in practice, like, you can still sell the holding company of the license. The UCI can't stop you selling a majority share. What, you can only sell it once every 3 years, the majority share in your company? No. Like, so they mean you can't literally assign the license to somebody else, but you can just take over the company. That's no problem.
Yes, but does that also mean that you are forced to take over the paying agent of the riders that are left over?
Well, then
because that makes it less lovely to buy for a team like UnoX, for example. I'm UnoX. I've got Norwegian and Danish riders. I'm not going to buy some Belgians.
But that's the point. Because if you can just assign the license, right? Sell it, and then say my company is bankrupt now, and you just
then the riders are fucked.
Yeah, and the staff are fucked. But if you have to sell the company with the license to UnoX, then the condition of holding that license, as the UCI said in their press release, is not just the sporting criteria, it's the ethical, financial, all that stuff. And then, well, I mean, like they keep saying that. It's like, are you fucking serious? Like, teams have not paid riders and passed that last year. Like, a team didn't pay its riders for a long time and passed that. It's like, what? Like, what do you have to do to not pass those criteria? So it's really, because the sporting criteria is the last one. I'm like, is the only one pretty much that gets applied from what I can see. But yeah, it's the UCI, I think, was trying to calm everybody down with that because of that early reporting. They were saying, hey, riders affected. If you have a contract, we're going to ensure that you don't get left in the lurch in respect of that contract at least. And even staff contracts, you're not just going to get thrown out on the street if you have an existing contract. That was, I think, the point of what they were saying. Also, I think they were putting a deadline on it. They said, I think October 15th, the teams have to submit all the essential information to the UCI, and then October 19th, the UCI publishes a short list of teams that have presented their essential information to be World Tour teams in the following year. That then becomes a confirmed list in December or something. I don't know.
But I believe that there should have been some lesson from last year, as in the fact that the actual date where the stuff has to be given is all on October 15th is slightly worrisome for me. As in, I feel like the last deadline for a merger that should happen in cycling should be on the 1st of August. In general, in my opinion.
You can only announce transfers from the 1st of August.
Well, but that's the point, right? Yeah. Because then you're allowing everybody that gets affected by it to handle it with the appropriate time. Because now it's all going to be last minute. And there has to be some method to make it more morally right, if that makes sense.
Oh, I mean, but there's no...
Not sure if that's the right term, but...
But there's no indication that riders and staff are going to get laid off or fired necessarily.
I agree, but I feel like it's a likely scenario that someone will get affected. Even though it's not riders and staff, it might be a rider that might end up being not signed as a consequence, like you mentioned in the last podcast, for example. So there's always going to be someone affected by the small time that it's going to be fall over.
Yeah, it's like, you're right. It's locked up the transfer market for how long? 2 weeks, probably nearly at this point. But what was I saying? Yeah, so the UCI has basically put a deadline on it to say, hey, if you don't, this needs to be sorted one way or another by October 15th. And if you haven't, And if one of the teams or two of the teams, it'd be realistically probably one of the teams has not submitted the essential information by October 15th, and we publish it on October 19th, that team, their riders are allowed to walk. Now, their contracts are still valid with the original team, but they're allowed to go and solicit new offers because basically it's giving them, as you said, Benji, a very short window of however long before the next year, but it's trying to give them enough of a window to go and find a new team if for whatever reason their team dissolves. Now, from memory, B&B were given an extension last year, or I can't remember exactly what happened, but I feel like the B&B riders were told very, very late. And what about Quebec? What happened with them? Because it wasn't Simon Clark, like riders like that who trusted Quebec, they stayed very, very late. And then ironically, those team principals then start new teams. So yeah, those other criteria, who cares about them?
Yeah, but like, if we take a look at the scenario, we know that on Quickstep side, Bacala owns 80% of the stake, reportedly, and Lefevre 20% of the stake. On Jumbo Visma's side, I think Richard Plugge with Blanco Pro Cycling is the license holder, but the actual financial person behind the scenes is that dude that got rich off getting those like those special things you can do in supermarkets. So for example, you can save X amount of like stickers coupons. And you can get something like that, like sticker coupons. Robert van der Wallen or something. And like, I'm wondering, was this decided by Bacala over Lefevre's head? And on Jumbo's side, was this decided by van der Wallen over Plugge's head?
I doubt. No, Plugge would be clued in.
I think so.
For a move like this, but with Quickstep, I'm not sure. I know that Lefevre said in his article last week that on Saturday that Patrick Evenepoel had a meeting with Bacala above his head about things. So
but that was a while ago. I heard that like 2 months ago or a month ago.
Yeah, but that happened this year, and so it's probably been in motion since June, July period. Maybe that initiated it. I don't know, but we'll see. Probably after Lombardia, hopefully after Lombardia, if everyone involved, there is clarity. Certainly we'll have clarity on Roglic's team. Other news related to that is apparently Wout van Aert's coach, Mark Lambrecht?
Yes, Mark Lambrecht.
Is going with Roglic to Bora Hansgrohe. I'm not sure if that's with Roglic or he also just got an offer, staff move around. Is it a coincidence? Well, probably not.
Reportedly moving. It's not official yet, but he's reportedly moving to Bora.
It's a very specific rumor. Like it's a coach that, it's
who the fuck would leak that?
Yeah. So I think
Kion's new trainer, maybe.
Okay.
Unless Kion leaves after 2024, then he's gone again. Then maybe Mark Lambrecht follows Kion to the next team that he joins.
Yeah. So. And yesterday, it was reported, or Jumbo confirmed via Daniel Benson, that no riders will be going with Roglic because people were like, Jan Tratnik's Slovenian, he's going to leave too. It's like, that's not how this works, buddy.
But the question there then is, if no riders are leaving with Roglic, then there's pure guess in my head. I don't know the exact numbers. Maybe 25, 26 riders still under contract for 2020 for Jumbo Visma, which means there's only space for X amount of Quickstep riders in this entire deal anyway, unless Jumbo starts placing riders like, I don't really want to name anyone, but if I have to, someone like Leonard Hofstede or Hesman, for example, on a team that they don't need to care about, but they maybe have to pay their salary or something.
Hesman could have his contract terminated, depending on what happens.
But not yet. As in, he's being investigated by the German police or something.
German police.
It's not with the UCI yet, right?
No.
So I wonder when we'll get an update from that. I read a recent update somewhere that they didn't find anything in his house, but that doesn't necessarily much. But as a consequence, I'm like, I feel like that will be finished after this year, and not necessarily this year still. So
the German police don't care about the merger. They'll take their time. They don't care about UCI essential document deadline date.
But for me, this starts to feel not really like a merger. Since
if there's only 5 spots, 6 spots, that's not a full. That's It's not
And
many
like,
spots.
I know we're deep diving into this, and this is Lombardia podcast, but what does this say about the motives behind this whole merger from both sides in the first place? As in, what are the motives from Quickstep side? Lefevre wants to get out, is one of them. And on Jumbo's side, I'm like, there's the rumor of Specialized. There's rumor of Soudal wanting to go over. They also mentioned at some point, Soudal, that they would be interested in going over regardless of Remco, which is pretty big sponsor-wise. Then there's the Amazon thing that is also affected there. I'm like, what is the real motive from Jumbo's side in your eyes, if you're like seeing that from the outside?
Well, I guess Remco's pretty good.
Yeah.
Roglic obviously wanted to leave, and without Remco, you'd have one top tier GC leader in the team, or like top GC / climbing rider. Obviously Jorgensen and others and Tal, they hope get there, but they're not at that level yet. And I guess if you can get Bakler across, it's another billionaire.
Yeah.
As
That's
well.
true.
So, but yeah, you're right. If you got Amazon and you got Visma and you're sort of good for sponsors, why would you do it as well?
It starts to feel to me like Jumbo or the team behind it wasn't able to secure this large budget that they hoped they would from an international sponsor. And therefore they wanted something extra, which is a Soudal, for example, which kind of makes me worry about the sport if the biggest team can't do that.
No, I think that's been overplayed a little bit. Like they've just announced Amazon are coming in. They got Visma.
I agree, but it's also
like people are like, oh, they can't find a sponsor. It's like they just did.
They just did, but it's also like it didn't expand their budget. They needed the potential merger to expand their budget based on the reported amounts.
Well, it depends. Like they're shutting down the skating team. I don't know what's happening with the women's team. That seems to be had a change. Not seems to be. It's had a change of management.
I'm worried about the women's team. As in, I enjoy the change of management because I feel like they were visionless in the past. There were no real changes there when it comes to Van Empel, godlike rider. She's gonna be good in the future. But outside of that, it feels like they went stagnant over the years. And maybe the change of management will change that. But on the other hand, I'm also feeling like the whole women's team is an afterthought in this entire discussion for the people involved.
I think so, yeah. It doesn't really get mentioned, even though it is within the same structure, whereas the Quickstep's women's team, maybe I think Lefevre does have an equity stake in it. It does share sponsors, but it is separately owned. It is not within the same structure. Maybe that means...
And they've confirmed that it's safer or something.
So that will exist independently. But yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out what will happen. I guess to answer your question short, Benji, if you could bring another billionaire into your structure, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. True. But hey, that's the Jumbo Visma stuff, the merger stuff, some discussion about it. But when it comes to Cavendish, we've heard some news today.
Mark Cavendish via Astana announced that he will be returning for the 2024 season. This was, I think, when I was like, oh, this is really, really happening, is when Merku said he was going to be joining Astana, or the Danish press reported it. I was like, well, they're not signing him to lead out Case Bowl, I don't think, or Alexei Lutsenko. So Astana and Merku, not Astana, well, Astana, Merku, Cav. He looked good. Didn't he come second the day before he crashed out in the Tour?
Yes. Or he also had that sprint where he had his mechanical...
Yeah, he was coming fast.
Yeah. He was ahead, I think, and Philipsen came from... Am I stupid?
I think so.
I don't... What do you mean? You think I'm stupid or you think that... Don't say both.
I don't know. I mean, also, yeah, a lot of people had issues with the... with chain drops, I think, as well, when they were trying to iron out. Like, a lot of people couldn't get 12-speed compatible cranksets or something. I don't really understand it. Luke will know it better, but I hope that issue is resolved. As an aside, where Shimano went to 12-speed, but then chain and cassette and a lot of the teams I know didn't have the right crankset. But that was in 2022, you're saying, so... I've lost it.
I'm so confused.
I've lost it. Once I start talking about it, I just lose it. But yeah, that was this year anyway.
But Cavendish is continuing for
Is he
another
winning?
year.
A stage at the Tour. That's why this is happening.
How likely is the Mercu transfer?
All right, 100%.
Okay, then he's winning on Champs-Élysées. Fuck it.
That's impossible because they finish in Nice.
Fuck!
Hilly circuit.
Damn it! I blew it. Mark Cavendish is going to win a mountain stage.
Maybe Astana just stage. They block off the Champs-Élysées. They just stage him winning there. Be like, hey, stage 22 of the Tour de France.
Damn it. I thought I had my prediction.
He's 1 year older. He's had a crash. I think he'll be motivated. I don't know. It's a lottery. It's a lottery.
Might as well try it. What the fuck is Astana doing anyway otherwise?
Exactly. I don't think Mercu will be good, though.
Wow, you might as well try it.
I think Mercu...
At least they have
Is he low-key, high-key washed, as LeBron would say?
As long as they have the chemistry, the dream is possible.
Yeah.
Old chemistry is still chemistry.
It is, and maybe it's just another person to help coach the other riders, like a Case Bowl. Like, this is how you do a lead out. This is what we want to achieve. Because, yeah, Syriza, I don't think will be that guy, but they got no one to set up. I guess they brought in Cantor. They just signed Max Cantor. So Cantor, Mercu, Ballerini. It's actually, it's Ballerini, Mercu. It's actually looking like they got two of the Quick-Step train from 2021. It was Mercu, Ballerini,
the exact
Asgreen.
train that was washed in 2023.
Yes.
But maybe that's the chemistry with Jakobsen.
They got Schelling. And it should be better than this year's train. Like it should be better. Can't be much worse.
Depends, if you get Geraint Thomas to do it again.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if he'll do the Tour de France. But yeah, that's Cav. Hopefully he has some success next year. To be honest, it makes sense because if I was them, I'd get him to do all 3 Grand Tours and try and just rack up points because they need some points, Astana, despite Lushenko's really good farming in the Summer Asian Games and the
Tour of Turkey.
The Tour of Turkey upcoming, which he might win. He's good in those sort of races. Otherwise, probably should have had an emerger discussion. Movistar released a very strange statement this morning because people have been saying what's going on with the team, and the statement reads as follows, if I can find it. Good day. We know that many of you are waiting for news, and we apologize to you for the wait. Or some of you are upset by the wait regarding our men's team 2024. In a few days, we'll give you more information. We're going to speak first about our current staff and then about incorporations. But I don't know if plantilla, my Spanish obviously is okay, but if plantilla means staff or like roster, I'll need someone to so maybe they mean, I think what they mean by that is they'll talk about extensions first, renewals of current riders, because it'd be weird it's like no one's waiting for staff news, and then talk about new signings coming in from other teams. So they're just saying we'll talk in a few days, which is, I do hate tweets like that. It's like, well, I guess maybe it calms people down because it's saying...
It's different. As in, Quick-Step has the announcement of the announcement of the announcement sometimes.
Arcade did it yesterday. It's criminal.
I hate it. But when it comes to Movistar, it feels more like...
We're not folding. They're telling people we're not folding.
It feels like I'm a social media manager of a team, and I'm getting worried that I'm getting assaulted by everyone in the comment section telling me, where's the fucking news? Where's the fucking news? So I give them a message just to calm them down.
True.
That's how it feels.
Yeah. It's coming in a few days. We're not folding. I think you're right. That's kind of what it is. So hopefully Movistar, because they've got 7 riders confirmed for next year. It's October 4th. And they have on their roster, as I said, 7 riders. That's just crazy. So we'll see.
I do believe Movistar will be fine in 2024. As in, like, Maz is probably going to be the leader again.
Yeah.
And from an article from Nacho Labarga in Marca, he went through everything when it comes to the team. Obviously, Carlos Rodriguez didn't work out. But there's so many riders that are likely to actually be...
We assume they just extended everybody that's out of contract, right?
Yeah, most of them, definitely. And there's also riders that are going to be joining, like we spoke about Pelayo Sanchez at some point. I'd expect Rubio, Rojas, Pedrero, Arcas, Cortina, maybe Gaviria as well, also to be extended. And next to
And they've
Oscar Rodriguez was leaving, right?
Yeah, so they've lost Oscar Rodriguez reportedly to Ineos. Kanter's gone, Jorgensen's gone, Verona's gone, Gorka Izagirre's gone. So that's for 5 riders probably definitely out the door. And so that brings you down to, you know, I think everyone's going to get extended because there's not enough rumors about riders going there. Unless
but also, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Like, say they bring in Pelayo Sanchez and 5 other sort of Spanish
guys. Pierna, for example.
Is he going to Bora?
Is he going to Bora? He might be, actually.
No, I always confuse him with the other fella.
Who the fuck is the other fella?
Who's the other guy going to Bora?
Spanish guy going to Bora.
Roger Adria. Yeah,
yeah.
Raul Garcia Piana. He's going to Arkea. On a 1 year. Very strange. So if he's going to Arkea and Adria's going to Bora, it's like, what Spanish guys are they bringing in, Movistar? Because they're like 22. And Igor Arrieta went to... that was because the father got fired in Movistar, so that was never happening. He's going to UAE. So I think there's going to be a lot of extensions for like the Norsgaard, Holman type guys. And I assume they're already done. Like Nelson Oliveira has been extended, because if he wasn't, like Ineos or Bora or whoever should be trying to sign that guy because he's still so good. But yeah, it's very weird to have all this transfer news still up in the air so late. Anyway, that's our Lombardia preview and some news around the traps. Is anything else, Benji? Any other bombshells?
I think that's about it. There's probably another bombshell here or there that is about to drop this month. Some great for the sport. Some might be less. We don't know. So guess we'll see. We'll be here to pick it up.
All right, we'll see you with our recap of Lombardia on Saturday. Hopefully it's an exciting race. And we'll see you then. Ciao.